I think you spoke to someone on my team, Michelle, earlier today.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I did.
Hey, do you have 5 to 10 minutes to maybe talk about the property that we were talking about and see if we can kind of help the seller?
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Okay, so I'm looking at the notes that she sent me, and I'm tracking that the property's been vacant for a little bit, and they're potentially open to something creative, like a subject to transaction.
Well, I thought that they were. It's not exactly vacant on the upstairs. It's basically two apartments. So downstairs has the walkout basement is a separate apartment, and so the parents are still living downstairs. They need to they need to sell this property before they can actually move out. So the upper
Got it.
level has moved out, and that's what they originally, when we first listed the home, they told me that they were open to this. And then in talking to them yesterday, I think that they were confused and assumed that what we were talking about was an assumable loan. So now that they realize it's not an assumable loan, they were like, "Oh, no, 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 yeah, we can't do that." So I still wanted to discuss it with you and make sure that maybe there's something I don't know about, or some way to still present it to them. But yeah. So we'll see. Well, I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, regardless, I would love to explain it to you in case, we work together on another deal. You know what I mean? Like the more people that
Yeah.
understand it, the better. So basically, are you familiar with subject to at all, or?
Not. I mean, they a little. I guess I did spend about 30 minutes asking Michelle questions yesterday because I've never done one, but I've received. Actually, it's funny. It must be something that's coming up a lot more common because in the 8.5 years of my doing real estate, I've never had one, and now this is the third one that I've actually gotten on my listings just this year. So, but so I've never done one, but yeah.
Okay, perfect. I think that the fad is getting more and more common as people, hop on YouTube or whatever, because everybody learns how to use this strategy to, buy properties at a lower rate, right? Um, and I think it's getting more common because obviously interest rates are still kind of high and they haven't really sunk yet. But basically, a subject to transaction is when you purchase the property subject to the existing mortgage. So if
Mm-hmm.
the seller has a mortgage of like 100 grand, we would essentially purchase the property by taking over those mortgage payments, and we'd essentially be paying the mortgage bill. So the taxes, insurance, HOA, all that stuff. And yes, the risk, right, or the thing that people get nervous about is their mortgage, the debt is still on the seller's name. Usually, this strategy is very, very crucial for someone that has low equity in their property. So I'm sure you've had clients that have had properties that have low equity and they were having issues selling the property. The subject to transaction is probably a really good option for them because instead of them paying all those closing costs and all those closing fees and agents' commissions and then ending up writing a check to sell the property, someone like me would probably take over those mortgage payments, give them some cash on top, and usually we pay the agent's commission out of our own pockets. So,
Oops.
no, it's all good.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So that part, all of that, I understand completely how it works and all of that stuff. So that's not really my question.
Oh,
My question would be kind of the terms, I guess. Really, is what we would just have to discuss and see, how those terms would look to make it make sense for them because they really wanted to get out there. They do have, just over 200,000 in equity. And that's after commissions and closing costs and everything. So they would still have about 200,000 in equity that they wanted to be able to use to purchase their next home. And so doing this wouldn't give them their equity out that they need unless somebody was willing to, at least put that much down. But then I know it doesn't necessarily make it a win for the buyer. That kind of defeats what they're trying to do. So that's where I was like, okay, maybe we just got to figure this out and find out if we can make terms make it work. But I just don't know, how to do that where they do need to get their cash out.
so are they looking to buy another property?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that
Okay.
was another concern that they had was like, are we going to be able to qualify for our next loan? Because they only do have 200,000 in equity, so they're going to have to still get a loan on the next property. And so that was another concern: is how do they go about getting a loan right away? Because they don't have time to wait for several months to go by to have proof of someone else making the payments. For their lender, they need to be able to go get a loan immediately.
Yeah, 100%. That's a very important concern. A lot of the times, what I usually do, because one, I don't want to screw the sellers when I take over their mortgage. So what I usually do is I connect them with one of my mortgage loan officers, and they will do a check on the seller to see if they had the existing debt on their name, would they still be able to qualify for a new mortgage? And if the question is no, if the answer is no, then subject to probably isn't the best option for them. But there is an opportunity or a chance that they would get qualified because the mortgage loan officer and the underwriters and stuff like that would know that somebody else was performing on it. But I don't like to give that guarantee because I'm not a licensed, mortgage loan like originator. But if they talk to a professional and they said that, hey, you guys are still able to qualify for a mortgage, then I would feel comfortable moving forward with the subject to transaction.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then, so that answers that question. Thank you. And then another concern, I guess, that comes up is that when, how long does this usually, if this were to work, and, just for my knowledge too, for maybe even if this doesn't work on this one, maybe another, but if this were to work, how long is it? Is it usually just for the life of the loan, or do you have in the contract some sort of, clause that says, you have to refinance out of this in 1 year, 5 years, whatever?
Yeah, you can do both, right? It just depends on the seller. I've had sellers that told me, "Hey, bro, hey Tim, I need to buy a house in 5 years," and we could do like, "Hey, there could be a 5 year balloon on it, right?" Where at the end of the 5 year term, I'd have to refinance out whatever we negotiated. And then we've had sellers where, you know, your sellers are not in this predicament, but I'm just using this as an example where the seller was going through a foreclosure, and instead of them losing the house and having their credit score absolutely demolished and they get nothing out of it, we give them some money, take over the mortgage, and they're more than happy to allow that mortgage to live its whole life, right? um, so it really depends on the seller. If the seller was like, hey man, I don't really feel comfortable having my mortgage to my name for that long, um, our average deal is usually about the 5 to 7 year range. But obviously, we can work something out with sellers and agents if that doesn't work. But that's just our preferred one. And
Mhm.
the reason why is because at the end of the day, 5 to 7 years in our mind is a long enough time for us to be able to refinance either through appreciation over time, and it just gives us a little bit of a bandwidth where if the seller's like, hey, I want to get refinanced in 2 years, that's a big risk for everybody. Because if the
Mhm.
property doesn't appreciate enough, then I'm not going to be able to refinance out that loan, or I'm going to,
Mhm.
come out of pocket with a lot of money, and then the seller's going to have to end up foreclosing,
Yeah.
right? Which is, I mean, they get the property back, but it's like nobody really wants to play that game.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They don't want to have to do that. They just want to,
Exactly.
yeah.
Right. So that's why we usually say that 5 to 7 year mark. But like I said, like, it depends on what the seller wants. And for this property or any other property, like I'd be happy to talk to anybody, and see if we can work anything out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's cool.
What other
Yeah,
questions do you
well, that
have?
makes sense. Um, oh, the like proper recourse, and I don't know if this is maybe like because it's sort in Utah. I know California, other states are definitely different, and that you always have not only your realtor but a real estate attorney. And in Utah, I guess it's just not as common to have a real estate attorney involved. But for something like this, I would feel like, oh my gosh, maybe we
Oh,
should because the contract is
100%.
different, and I'm not as familiar with it. I want to make sure they're protected. Because I did when I got an offer like something like this from another buyer for another property that I had listed. I looked over their contract and I was like, even though it states
It's
that
like Chinese, isn't
event.
it?
No, 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 it was very basic. It was actually very simple, but that was the problem. It was almost too simple. I was like, there was no recourse in place for, let's just say that the buyer all of a sudden has some extreme catastrophe, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, I mean, they had all the good intentions in the world, but all of a sudden out of nowhere, that they need to file bankruptcy, and they say that if the property will be given straight back to the seller, but it's like, how do you go about doing that? There wasn't any
Yeah.
process or recourse or way to, because they in their contract they wanted the seller's name to be completely removed from the deed, not adding their name. Like all the sellers are off the deed. It's just the new buyer, and it's like, how do you enforce that?
Yeah. So usually, when you do a subject to sale, that is the norm. So, we are purchasing the property, like actually purchasing the property. So that deed will get transferred if you do sell it on a subject to. But the way you kind of protect people, there are a couple of different ways that investors do this transaction. And yes, I 100% agree that you probably need a lawyer. When we do our transaction, so I usually buy in the Midwest. So, Midwest is my main market, but I'm actually trying to help someone in Utah find like a new primary residence. But in Kentucky, we have to close at a title company. So, and I'm not sure about Utah. I was about to ask
Yeah,
you a
we do
question.
too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do.
So if we did sign a contract with the seller, we would have to close at a title company that understands subject to. So what usually happens is, for my team, like I'm gonna use my team as an example. We have a transaction coordinator. Her name is Victoria, and once the contract's signed, she will call title companies in Utah and ask them, "Hey, do you do subject to?" And some title companies do, some title companies don't. But once we find a title company that does it, we will do the closing there. So the lawyers are there, they understand the transaction, and we would close at that facility. Um, the two ways that you can do a subject to transaction. The first way, which I don't do because it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of weird. They would buy it in a trust. So the trust,
Oh yeah.
right? They would put the property in the trust. We would be the owner of the trust, and then we would have the seller as a beneficiary, right?
Yes, yeah, I've seen things like that here in our county too, just for like partial ownerships because we have a lot of rare vacation areas. So there are $5 million vacation homes, and
Yes,
it's very common for 8 people to go in on a vacation home, and so that's the way they do it too. Is they being the LLC, each member is just an eighth of an ownership of that LLC, and basically, if you're selling your share, you're selling your portion or your share to that LLC. You're not really, we're not selling the property; we're selling a share of that LLC. So yeah,
correct.
kind of the
The only reason why I don't like doing that is because obviously, if we were to sell the property, it's a lot more complicated in a trust.
mhm.
There's a lot more legality to it. The second way is I'm gonna try to explain this the easiest way as possible, and if you tell me that I'm not explaining it right, I will try to redo it. Okay? Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So imagine that your mortgage is like a cup of water on your table, right? So you have a cup of water. This is your original mortgage. So the seller's mortgage is 100 grand at 3% interest. What we would do at the title company is essentially we would wrap the original mortgage with a new mortgage on it, right? We would put a new mortgage around the original one, and that second mortgage that's around the property will be identical to the first mortgage. And then that mortgage, the first lien holder, would be the seller. So that's how I would protect the seller, where the property is actually mortgaged and the property owner or the seller has a first lien position on that new note. So if we did foreclose, there is an ability for the seller to actually take the property back.
Yeah. Okay.
When people usually tell you like, "Oh, we'll pass the property back over to you, no questions asked," I usually ask some questions about that because if there's no lien holder position or whatever it is, like there's really no protection for the seller, in my
Yeah.
opinion,
Yeah. Hmm.
right? So if you get that comment like from another investor that's like, "Hey, we will pass the deed back over, no questions asked," like there's nothing really legally binding you to that.
Right. Yeah.
So I would probably do it the way that I'm suggesting, where we put the owner, the original homeowner, as one of the lien holders.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. That's what I was wondering about too, because I'm like, in the offer that I got for another seller of mine, which they declined it anyway, but that's kind of how it was stated, is that their names would be removed completely. And I was like, then how do we like get it back if you default? So that
Nah,
makes more sense. Yeah.
yeah. So that's just my tidbit of advice, but obviously, um, I always tell people, hey, consult your own team and see what like your lawyers say about it. But there's so many ways to skin a cat. I just think that having the seller as a lien holder is probably one of the best options in my opinion, just because they have some control.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Okay. Okay. Well, that makes sense. All right. Well, that basically answers all of my questions. And so I'll bring it to their attention again. I spoke with them yesterday, but judging by what they were saying yesterday, they were like, "No, we really can't do it. We want to get our equity out." And then Andrew, because the reason is that two couples own this property, and one of the couples are divorcing, and so the
Mm.
divorced couple are like, "We don't want to be tied together anymore on this. Like, we need our names just removed from each other's life. We need to move on." So I think maybe in their circumstances it just wouldn't work. But
Are
I'll
they
also explain
are
to them.
all their names on the mortgage?
Yeah, yep, all four of them are on the loan and
Oh my
everything. Yeah,
gosh, that's like crazy.
I know. So this divorce was very unfortunate.
How much equity do they have in total?
um, Over 200. Like I think when we did their net sheet, if they got an offer for the price that it's listed at right now, after all fees, commissions, and everything, they would walk with 200K. And so
Mm.
if we have to drop it, anymore to get it sold. It's just going to dip into their
Equity.
200K, but which isn't the end of the world, but it's not ideal. But yeah, so that's why they were looking at other options. Is mostly just because they'd like to hurry. They would really like to get moved and move out of that house, not have to do it during the winter, but it's looking like they might just have to wait longer or reduce their price again to try to get another offer. But yeah, they really just didn't want to have to not have that equity come out.
I'm trying to think. How much is left on the mortgage?
Five, I want to say it was 515. Let me see if I can go back to my last net sheet and look at it to see the exact number, but it was just over five.
Oh no, you're fine.
I did not save it. Yeah, how weird. I know it was just over 500.
Okay. No worries. We don't need the exact number. I'm trying to think like what we can do. I'm trying to see if for down payments, so let's say like theoretically we were to, let's say the seller is open to it, right? Like, okay, we're open to doing the subject to thing. How much money would they need down? Are they looking for the entire equity, or is there any wiggle room? I think that's like the big question for me is there any wiggle room to the amount of money down? And
they tell me no, but you know how it's just until their push comes to shove and they're forced to, then it's like, okay, well, we'll make it work. So they're telling me no, but they would like to be able to have at the most minimal loan because they're
True.
retired. They don't have, other than I think whatever they might have a pension or something, but anyway, they don't have, income coming in anymore. So they don't want to have to take out a very, very big loan. And so they need as much of that 200 as possible to keep their loan small on their next house.
No, it makes
I don't
sense.
know what their breaking point is completely, but they just,
Got it.
Right now it's just the most that we can.
Are you the buyer's agent too, like for the other side?
No. Oh, no. I'm just representing them to sell their property. So if another agent comes with a buyer, they would be represented by that agent, or if it was something like you guys, I guess you would be representing yourselves, or
Yep.
whatever, however that works.
Okay. Are you helping the sellers find their next property?
I did refer them to, because they're moving out of state, so I did refer them to an agent that I do partner with, and he's helping them. But that's
Got it. But he's kind of they're kind of hemmed up on waiting for this sale, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Shoot, man. Okay. Yeah, if I mean, this is my personal number, so if anything changes, I can touch base with you too, just to see like, hey, like what our wiggle room is, and to see if the seller changes their mind down the road. But like I said, like I'm happy to just have a conversation with you. Like you sound like you're a freaking super rock star real estate agent. Most real estate agents are like, no, I don't want to hear anything about this crap. So
I'm always willing to learn, especially if it's creative financing, because people need help all the time. I need to know, like, any arsenal I can have up my sleeve that might help somebody. I want to know more about.
Yeah. For subject to though, I think subject to is obviously a little more dicey. I love seller finance. I think seller finance is the best because the actual seller is the bank, right? Versus having another bank in between us. But yeah, I mean, I would love to help you out anyway. If you got like an issue or you get some crazy offer from somebody, I'll be happy to look at it, and then maybe I'll just end up buying it, right?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, for sure, I would.
So
yeah, this was really nice too, because the other offer that I got, in fact, it was just a couple of weeks ago from someone else offering this type of offer on one of my other sellers. And so I tried to call him back with some questions, and he messaged me saying that, he couldn't talk. Let me call you right back in a little bit. And then he didn't call me back, and I kept calling him. And then finally my seller was like, hey, we just don't want to do it anyway. So we just let it go. But I was like, you didn't even answer my phone calls to answer questions. So I was like, oh, all right then.
yeah, he's probably not a good buyer. Would your other seller, like for that other property, would they be open to having a discussion?
They couldn't either, because we spoke to their lender. They're under contract already, their next property, which is a build job, so it's not going to be ready until about February anyway. And so I spoke with their lender, and they're like, yeah, they will not qualify for both loans with that in place.
So they wouldn't be good. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Damn, that's crazy. So what I'm curious about is how the underwriters do things, because obviously if you're a person that has a rental property, right, and you rent out the property, doesn't that help your DTI out when you're getting underwritten?
Yes, which is so weird to me because it works. All it takes in that situation is a lease agreement.
Correct. So that's what we
it does a
do.
little bit confuse me that they wouldn't consider that, that they wouldn't include that somebody else is making the payment. I mean, it's the exact same as if they chose to just
Correct.
keep the house and rent it out.
So
that's weird to me.
So a way we can do that, actually, have you heard of contract for deed?
Is that kind of like almost like a rent to own type of it, or no? It's a lease with option to buy or something. Is that
So two different things, but a contract for deed, like essentially, so I'm actually doing a contract for deed right now. I'm doing a contract for deed in Boston where we're buying the property on a contract for deed, and essentially the title, like imagine this as a car, right? You're buying a car, and when you get a bank loan, you don't get the title, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get the title when you pay off your car note. And that's essentially what a contract for deed is. So the deed actually is held in escrow until we fully pay off that mortgage or fully pay off the seller. And then we gain full control of the title. So what we do is when the banks are getting weird about a transaction, they say, hey, the subject to transaction doesn't work. We'll buy the property contract for deed, and then we'll sign a 12-month lease that has the same exact price as the mortgage. And then we try to send that to the underwriter, and then we'll try to talk to the underwriters, be like, hey, like we're going to perform on the mortgage, like here's the proof of it, like here's a purchase contract for a contract for deed. If that doesn't work, like what if we sign a lease?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay.
So we try our best to articulate it to a mortgage lender, hey, like it's getting performed.
Yeah.
And then we kind of see what they say, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
So let me
That's
know.
interesting. Okay. Yeah, for sure I will. Oh, and tell me your name again. I'm going to save this number on my phone. Sorry.
Absolutely. It's Tim. It's Tim.
Okay.
And then my last name is 2 letters, YU.
Okay.
And then I think if you Google my name, if you put Tim U real estate, I should pop up. So you can Google create me if you want to.
Oh, well, I wasn't going to do all of that. I was just going to save your number on my phone for future possibilities. But yeah,
no worries. But yeah, just let me know what's going on. I'll check in from you. I'll check into you from time to time, and yeah, let's stay connected. Let's make some money.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Tim.
All right, I'll see you. Thanks for the time.
Okay, bye bye.